Hi, this is 365801 and this is day 19 of the 25 Days of Manga. Now, I have introduced a seinen and a shoujo and a josei title that were all also BL or BL adjacent. So I bet you're all thinking, does she have one that is shonen? Is there a holy grail of a shonen that's also a BL? And honestly, I was like, oh, obviously not. I mean, come on. And then realised I actually did have one. And I've actually been meaning to do a review of this work since I read the final volume. I managed to get this, I think, at the start of the year, near the beginning of the year, and I read it and I had planned to do a review. So, bizarre individual, sorry it's so long. It took me ages, but I'm finally getting around to talking about it. And one of the big reasons why I was having difficulty talking about it, there was a few aspects. I do remember saying I had thoughts and feelings. I still have thoughts and feelings about this work. One of the big issues I had with it was the fact that I didn't know how to feel about it as a work. I didn't know who it was aimed at. So just like when it comes to Loveless, knowing that it's in the josei category actually helps me to appreciate it for the work that it is. Because I then know, okay, cool. That helps me to know who should be reading this. But when I read this particular work, I wasn't sure who was supposed to read this. You know, who was the intended audience? Who is the intended audience of this particular work? And even though it's classed as shonen, I still am not 100% sure that's who this is aimed at. So, without further ado, this is the shonen I would like to present today. And this is That Blue Sky Feeling, volumes 1, 2 and 3, and it is complete at 3 volumes. The story is by Okura, and the art is by Komahashi, and this is a Viz Media title. Loveless was also a Viz title, so this is interesting that this is Viz. And this was one of the aspects that I kind of looked at the last time when I was planning and prepping to do a review video on this. I know it probably doesn't seem like I do much planning, but I do actually want to know about the works that I'm reading. So I was confused. Why was this work being printed by Viz in Viz's own imprint, rather than being printed as a BL title using Viz's BL imprint, Sublime? If it is BL, and that made me start to look at it, is it really BL? Is this classed as BL? Can it be classed as BL? And when I had completed it, when I started reading it, it gave me a sort of nostalgic feeling. It gave me this sort of feeling of being like an updated, modern, new, fresh version of nostalgic, old-fashioned works. The kind of works that were brought over and classified by American publishers as shonen i.e. boys love, but were not hardcore, and therefore were not put under the yaoi banner. We all classify everything as BL, but there is, in a sense, a reasoning behind that choice, and that is often due to the fact that, you know, whether or not there is sexual depiction in something can actually make a difference and impact on who is buying something and who is enjoying something. Not everyone wants to see sexual depictions. Sometimes we just want a romantic story, a fade to black. That sometimes is what people want, and therefore I can understand why those classifications were made. And this had that sort of feeling that it was a shonen ai title. Of course, it's still classified as such on Bakamanga websites, but they still use the old-fashioned American way of distinguishing between the works. So it's accurate in that sense, because it has that nostalgic, old-fashioned feel of not really being BL in the modern sense, and not being yaoi in the old-fashioned sense. So it was ironic in that sense that I was like, well, what is this then? How do I classify this? How do I talk about a work that I don't truly understand? I mean, what is it? Well, it's classified as shonen, and it's, a Viz imprint. But who is the intended audience? Are you saying that as a shonen title, you're expecting, Viz, I'm talking to you, or anyone else who has other opinions, you're expecting 12-year-old boys to be reading this? I don't think so. That's not to say that I don't think it would be good for them to. I do think teenagers could read this, and it would be quite good for them to read, eye-opening, help them to experience, a tolerant story, and something that could be uplifting and sweet. So I do think that in that respect, it could be beneficial. But is Viz in the habit of printing things and to educate teenage boys about tolerance and acceptance? Is that the point? Is that the intended audience? Because I don't see them promoting it within schools, which would be the logical place for them to be. So yeah, I mean, the intended audience for this, I'm not sure who they are. But that's not to say that it's not a great story that could be read by anyone and everyone. And if that means it gets classed as shonen, then okay. But is that just because of a Japanese classification? But Viz's, imprint is just Viz. So yeah, it was confusing, and I had issues with it because I wasn't sure who the intended audience for this work is. I'm not sure if I'm even the intended audience, or that there needs to be a specific intended audience anyway, which leads me back to the fact that this is classed as shonen, and you probably didn't know it was classed as shonen, because I didn't either, and that all these demographics are, in a sense, a bit woolly, and that there are certain works that transcend their classification to be within a demographic, and there are certain works that, even when it's within that demographic, is so niche that that whole demographic would not find that particular work enjoyable. And so these demographic titles, these demographics in use, are not particularly useful most of the time. So yeah, maybe that's the point. It certainly did make this a little bit more difficult to do a review on, which is why it's several months late. Anyway, back to the actual work on hand. This is translated by Jocelyn Allen, so of course I enjoy it. Maybe that's the demographic we should just be having. Translated by Jocelyn Allen. Basically anything in that people know, oh, that's fine, I'll read that, because that's the demographic I belong to. Jocelyn Allen translated it, so there's quite a lot of people out there who are probably the same. So Okura is a male author. He did a webcomic version of this, and then Koma Hashi did a redraw version for the print. And this is originally, I think, 2017 for volume 1, and then late 2018, I think, for volume 3 in Japan, and then 2019 in English. So it was over a 3-year period these volumes have come out. So very affordable. It's like £6.99, but you can get them for cheaper. So you can get the full story, 3 volumes, very reasonably priced. The art by Komahashi is slightly different, obviously, from Okura's. It felt a bit shoujo. There I go about demographics again. It was nice, it's clean, it feels round, slightly childish artwork. Hence the shoujo reference. I like the compositions of the panels, I like the designs, I like the look of their expressions. There's varying degrees of level. They have like chibi versions, more extreme expression, but sometimes I feel like their faces are a little bit flat. Sometimes it takes a lot for the expression, the emotion, to be shown in the expression. And I did find it quite interesting when you see the version of the characters that Okura had done from the webcomic. There was obviously changes made. So I did find it interesting to be able to look at the back of some of the volumes and see the characters in a different form. And I also like Okura's work. His artwork is nice. So I'm not sure if it was necessary to have Komahashi do the artwork. Although, as I said, it's nice, I like it, but it's nice. I like it. It's nothing, like, it's unique as well in its roundedness. But it didn't really, I don't know, it felt too, I don't know, there was something missing, there was something lacking, grittiness. It felt too, not clinical, but clean. And I've used that word already. It felt clean. So yeah, it's nice artwork, shoujo-esque, and a little bit too clean for my tastes. I like something a little bit more interesting, something with edges. Now, Okura has another work that is being published in Japan at the moment, and that is using his own artwork, and that looks really interesting and really good. And I think there's 3 volumes ongoing, and it's about a mother's experience of having a son who she suspects is gay. So I think Our Son is Gay is going to be published by Square Enix. Volume 1 will come out, hopefully as planned, but we'll see, in May 2021. So they're the same people that are printing Cherry Magic. So I think it'll be good quality, I hope. It looks dead sweet, and I'm definitely looking to pick it up next year. Just because it's a known voices story. You know that Okura is a gay man and he's writing these stories, and so in a sense it's an own voices story. I quite like that. For manga, we don't often get to know that much about the authors. The mangakas generally have a sort of the private life is kept private, so we don't always get to know too much about mangaka. And sometimes when we find out things, it's not always great. Sometimes when we do, it's great. So yes, Okura, his other work, I'm really looking forward to. His storytelling is interesting, so I want more of it. Now, the basic story, and I don't want to spoil it too much for anyone who is thinking about reading this and who hasn't picked it up yet. It is basically about a boy called Noshiro Dai, who is transferred over into a senior high school, probably in the second year, because he seems to be around that age, 17 I think he said. They use grades, but I'm not in a grade school. I've never been in a grade school, so I had to kind of work it out. So I'm assuming it's second year of high school in Japanese high school, and that makes sense to me. And he interacts with a boy. He comes across a boy who is a bit of a loner, and that is Sanada Ko, and he's very intrigued with him. And then he finds out that the reason he's a loner is because everyone is talking about a rumour that he is gay. Now, that's basically the story about how they get to know each other and become friends. That's the story. It's a basic premise. It's nice. Noshiro, when he's first introduced, is annoyingly naive to an almost willfully obtuse level. He ignores anything that is presented to him, whether it's someone telling him straight out something, or if he sees something. He is almost willfully obtuse in the way that he's denying the reality that he's being presented with. And it annoys the hell out of me. So when I first get introduced to Noshiro, I really don't like him for the first couple of chapters. I think he is aggressive in his friendliness and his and sort of ignoring of what people are saying to him, flat out saying, leave me alone, or stop doing that, or could you just not? And it's like he is what's described in Japanese as keiwai, kuki yomenai hito, where they can't read the atmosphere. And it's not as though he can't read the atmosphere, it's almost as though he can and he's choosing to ignore it to a point where it's the detriment of others. So yeah, there are times in the first volume that I just was wanting to just smack him because I was really annoyed on Sanada-kun's behalf. Now, when you meet all of the characters, Sanada-ko is a wee sweetheart, and he's almost like the most normal person in the story because he's aware, he's self-aware, and he's aware of the situation. He's in high school. There's rumours about him being gay. There are ways that he can interact and react, and he's choosing a way that seems very normal. It's self-preservation. And everyone else is going on about him being weird and stuff, separating himself. But that's kind of a normal reaction. If you don't want to get hurt, that's what you do. So he is the one who's always turning around to Noshiro and calling him weird. So I like that aspect, that Sanada actually comes across as, for me, very normal. And for the first part of the story, I very much was on Sanada-kun's side. There is another character called Yamamoto Ayumi, who has been Sanada-kun's friend since elementary school. Her friends are great. They are such great cheerleaders. They are 100% behind her. Kind of like they are all aware that she has a crush on Sanada-kun, and that probably it's not going to go anywhere. But they're there anyway as support, which is lovely for the first volume. And also, during the first volume, we get introduced to another character, and that is Hidemits Chiba, who I am not entirely sure I like all that much. There's things about him that I don't like, which I'll talk about later. But you do get introduced to a few of their classmates as well, and the main point of the first volume, and obviously the later volumes, is how Noshiro starts to get to know a little bit more about Sanada-kun. He's very open and honest about his thoughts and feelings and his reactions, but what he's really going through in not just this first volume, but as this work as a whole, is a sort of journey of self-discovery and self-awareness. He's not very sexual, and he's not very experienced when it comes to love. And here is someone who is being segregated, whether it's self-inflicted or whether it's society, due to his sexuality or due to his sexual experience. Whether it's real or not, like I said, it's from a rumour. So he's very interested, and this is the first time that Noshiro really starts to become interested in another person in that way, when relationships and sex and love, especially love, starts to become a much more real thing, even if it's something that he himself doesn't fully understand or comprehend. He wants to understand. And he also, at the same time, wants to know more about this particular boy. So from that aspect, this is very much like a normal, very old-fashioned shonen type story. The BL of the past. When someone's going, I've never felt this way. I'm having thoughts and feelings. And that's where, as a Fujo, your mind will go. And that's how, as a Fujo, you might read this story. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few spoilers now. So if you don't want to know about them, then, head off. Go and read it yourself. Come back. And then we can both talk about it now. Okay, so spoilers from now on. I will be talking about a couple of things that I have issues with. These are my thoughts and feelings. Okay, we ready? I am not sure I like Hidemits because this story has realism baked in. There is no sense of fantasy in this story. This could be a real person story. This could even be autobiographical. So the fact that there is a 26-year-old man who may be inhabiting the mentor role, but who has had a past relationship with a 17-year-old boy. He's 17 now, so he was in a relationship before, which means he might have been younger. That's a 10-year age gap. And we know that there was at least something going on because in one of the volumes, they mention about going into the bath together. And I know you're all saying Japanese people do bath stuff all together, that's fine. But there was an implication of something more going on. And by that point, you're already, as a Fujo, invested in the Noshiro Sanada ship. That's the ship that you're on. That's the ship you've been given to sail on. And then some other ship's coming along. And it's like, no. What's going on here? So, yeah, I was not always in support of Hidemits being there and being a force for stirring things up, for better or for worse. Because that's what he did. So, yeah. I think he was a necessary part of the story, but I'm not sure I was particularly fully on board the interactions with these teenage boys with this 26-year-old man. Now, that's because of my own personal experience growing up. As I said, this is a realism story. It's baked in. Yesterday, we were talking about Josei and how it's a psychological story, and I can see that as a fantasy. I can see that as a representation of perhaps society as a whole, but it's not real. There's boys with cat ears. Like, suspend disbelief is fine. This one, though, realism is baked in. It's like, hey, have a lovely realistic story here. So when you have this kind of age gap and the manipulation of individuals and their feelings, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Probably because I remember things like, what was I doing when I was in that year group? When I would be, 17 years old. And yes, I had friends who were 17 and going out with men who were 36. Like double their age. And I remember asking her, why are you going out with a man who is double your age? And you know what she answered? He has a car. Like, I laughed my ass off at the time. But I was at that point, like Noshiro, wondering, why? What is it that people are doing? Why are they doing this? Why are you seeing this person? Why are you going out and getting drunk on a weekend? Why? I was questioning the idea of love and romance and sex, just in the same way that Noshiro is. He is intrigued. And so I would ask my friend, why? And the answer was he had a car, and that wasn't really what the answer I was looking for, but it's the answer I got. And then I was like, but surely you must find him attractive. And one of our other friends who knew the guy burst out laughing and said, no way, this guy's ugly as hell. He's not attractive at all. Then the friend said, he's not that bad looking, come on, we've seen uglier. And it was like, are you insane? You're going out with an ugly 36-year-old because he has a car? That's your reason for dating a man? I'm like, he's 36, you're 17. That's gross. So yeah, my experiences as a 17-year-old have most definitely coloured my perception of the kind of experiences that 17-year-olds go through when it comes to older men. Not cool is basically the answer. Yes, this is, I mean, if you've grown up anywhere rural, that's what, that's the kind of experience you've probably had. So yeah, that's one of the aspects that I was not 100% behind. But yeah, it's just a small thing. Anyway, one of the other things that I actually both like about this and I don't like about it is that Noshiro is going through his exploration, and the ending of these 3 volumes is a conclusion, and at the same time it's not a conclusion. So the Fujo in me is looking from a BL happy ending. You know, we're together, we're in love, we might kiss, all of that stuff. I want the happy ending. That's the Fujo ending. We don't get that. But what we do get is much more realistic. It's baked in. It's ambiguous. And, you know, if you like going into movies and you like happy ending movies, and you like happy ending manga, then you're maybe going to come away from this disappointed that you don't get the happy ending that you expect as a Fujo reading it. But if you look at this as, this is not a BL work, this is a something else work, but we don't have something to classify it as, even though it's supposed to be shonen. Come on, I'm not sure about this. But if you look at it that this is not BL, that's why it's not in the Sublime, you know, catalogue, then you can read this and go, okay, this was a lovely story for what it was. In fact, if this was shoujo, I would feel more comfortable. If you said this is a shoujo work, I would feel much more comfortable. The fact that it's shonen is probably almost revolutionary. Because I'm not sure how many shonen have or will read this. But if they are little boys who are, just like Noshiro, not sure about things, or just like Sanada, who are sure about things and are very aware that it's going to be a difficult road for them, and this work helps them in some way, then I am 100% fully behind and I will cheer it all the way that this is a shonen work. Please, make it more accessible, you know? And it's not for me as a Fujo, but it is for me as someone who can appreciate good storytelling, good character development, and fun, realistic, lovely, sweet stories along the way. And that's what this is. So I fully recommend that you go out and read that blue sky feeling. As I've said, it's a beautiful translation and very nice, clean artwork. And I've talked way too long about this already. Hopefully, anyone else who has read this will have other thoughts and feelings, and that you can share them with me down below, because I'd love to hear what other people thought about this work. And if it confused them as much as it confused me. And yet, I don't know, I enjoyed it, and yet at the same time, I felt mixed emotions. So yeah, I'd like to hear about it if you have mixed emotions too. So that is my shonen. Were you surprised? We'll see what I come up with for tomorrow. I have no idea what I'm going to read next. Yeah, take care everyone. Definitely take care everyone. I'm going back to my wine glass now. It's been one of those days. So yeah, take care. And remember, every day is a BL day.